So we're with John Kelly. John Kelly is a personal injury attorney in Phoenix. He's also a former prosecutor, and he's agreed to answer some questions on the trial where Jeff Gordon was ordered to pay $36 million to Bobbi Kristina Brown. And these are online questions. With that said, John, let's go into the first question that was posted. This question is from Laura. Laura asks, will they release the transcripts of the trial so we know what happened?
Yeah, so Laura should be happy about this. They will release transcripts. That's something that's going to be public record, so people will be able to print those out, read them, or get them online. That's something that any transcripts of court proceedings are not, unless they're sealed for some reason, which that isn't the case in this case, my understanding. So those will be available to read.
Okay, excellent. Next question was from Alex. Alex said, since Nick Gordon lost at trial, does this mean he's more likely to be charged criminally?
I don't think it's necessarily more likely that he's going to be charged criminally, because the facts are the facts the way they are, and the judge didn't actually make any ruling on the evidence of guilt. They just made a ruling on evidence of damages. Now, that being said, I do think that there'll be more pressure from community and the public at large to have some kind of resolution to this, whether there's going to be criminal charges. With a lot of attention on the case, it puts pressure on the DA to make a decision and to potentially make, release their reasoning for either proceeding or not. But we have to keep in mind that for a criminal trial, the prosecutor has to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's different than in a civil case. A civil case is just the preponderance of the evidence, which is more evidence, which side has more evidence on their side. 51% of evidence sways someone this way, they win. So in this situation, I think that it isn't necessarily a higher likelihood, aside from the actual attention that it's getting and putting a little pressure on the DA's office.
Okay. Next question was from Anise. Anise asks, they awarded over $36 million to Bobbi Kristina Brown. But what if Nick Gordon doesn't have that kind of money? What happens to him and Bobbi's family?
Well, Bobbi's family is probably not going to be able to collect that money. Nick Gordon, as far as I know, doesn't have that kind of money to give, even though there's a judgment against him, a court order that he has to pay this money. He's likely going to file bankruptcy. He's going to do everything he can to avoid paying any of that money to the family of Bobbi. And that's, something that often happens in these kind of cases. Civil cases, the attorneys always have to understand when they're going into them that this may be kind of just a situation where they're getting it done to, have a little closure for the family, maybe get a little more attention to the case. I suppose if, Nick ever does come upon some money, they could pursue that, but very likely this isn't something that their family's going to collect on.
Okay, next question was from Ava. Ava said, I'm still confused about how Bobbi Kristina Brown died. She had cocaine in her system. If she did cocaine, why is Nick at fault?
Well, the judge didn't find that Nick was at fault necessarily for, the alleged crimes. He found that he didn't avail himself to the court, which then enters a default judgment against him. Basically, by not showing up to court, you're admitting all the allegations against you. So there was no testimony given to this judge of, about the cocaine and possible assaults and how it all went down. It was a matter of the judge looking at it and saying, well, he didn't show up. He had proper notice of the hearings. He had, someone told him about this, and he decided not to avail himself to a court. Therefore, I have to, as a matter of law, set a default judgment against him. Now we go on to determining what the damages are. And so all the testimony really was determining those damages. How much is the family out for the wrongful death? And so it's not a situation where we have any kind of real evidence and findings on how this all happened.
Okay, and the last question, this ties in a little bit to where your answer was, but the last question was from Sandie. Sadie asks, why was so much money awarded by the judge?
Well, the judge had a difficult task of determining the value of a young person's life. And, you know, there's a lot of different ways they can do that, but the judge did break this down. He said, you know, 1.575 million for money taken out of the account. The family had alleged that Nick had taken that money out of the account, so he awarded it. $250,000 in punitive damages, 1.37 million for assault and battery, which was alleged, 13.8 million for pain and suffering to the family. So that's kind of one of the big apportionments. And you know, how do you determine pain and suffering for a family for losing someone so early? It's a difficult thing to do. It's something that is just based on norms from previous cases, really. Another 15 million for present life value. So they may have looked at what kind of income capacity Bobbi had in the future and what kind of you know, businesses she was involved with and what kind of promotional things she was doing that was bringing in income. And then you know, extrapolating that out through her whole life expectancy and saying, you know, this is probably about the amount she could have earned in her life. So it's somewhat subjective, and it's very difficult for a judge to do, but someone has to, you know, be able to put some numbers on paper for the value of someone's life, and that's what happens.
Okay. Well, if you have any more questions for John, all you need to do is post them to the comment section below, and he's agreed to get back with you with answers. Thanks for your time, John.
Thank you, Ryan.